Hi everyone, it's Dutch Reefer and welcome back to a new video. So today I want to introduce you to my Reefer Nano tank, which is obviously a new tank that I bought about 2 weeks ago. And later on in the video I'll give you an update on the big tank, since it's still running, and well, I've got some future plans in mind that I'll share with you later on. So first, let's start with this new tank. As I said before, it's a Red Sea Reefer Nano, which was actually quite hard to get. I wanted a small tank for the living room that didn't take up too much space, because our living room is not very big, and to keep it manageable, since that was one of the main concerns I had with the big tank, that it was getting a bit hard to manage. So that's why I chose this Reefer Nano. It's the total volume is about 100 liters. That's including the Sump, which I'll show you later on. So the display itself is about 80 liters, and then the Sump is about 20. I might be wrong by a couple of liters, but that's about the division between the Sump and the display. So as you can see, this is quite colorful. It's also quite blue. That's mainly because the lights are set to pretty much blue at this moment. There's of course also some white in there, but I've chosen to acclimate the tank to get everything used to this new setup, to have it a little bit more on the blue side, and then I'll change it to a little bit more white later on after everything has settled in. So I'll give you a quick review of the technique, of the tech that I'm using, the equipment that I'm using at the moment to power this tank, and then after that we'll get on to some coral shots, and then we'll move on to the big tank. So initially it had a Aqua Illumination Prime HD, which is a very nice light, but it did spread quite a lot of light through the living room. And I was really last year I went to an exhibition where they showed the new Red Sea ReefLED, and I was really surprised by the color that they put out. And then I read some reviews, and it turned out they were a very good light to buy when you look at the quality and the cost. So very good decision to buy one, I think. So you can see it right here. It's the ReefLED 50, so it's the smallest unit, and also the bracket that it comes with is especially made for this smaller unit. So it's a somewhat lighter version of the big bracket. You can move it to the sides actually, so that's easy for feeding. Perhaps I'll do a review on it later. For now, it's good to know that it's there. So to create flow in the tank, I have chosen to use two of the TMC ReefTide pumps. So Tropical Marine Center, I think it's a UK-based company. They created these pumps. It's the 4000S, so that's the smallest version, which can output about 4000 liters per second at its maximum capacity. So there's two of them, one on the left and one on the right, and these are creating the flow in this tank. For a cleaner, I have a small Tunze Care magnet, which I really enjoyed in the big tank, so I bought a small version for this tank. So that's about it as far as technology goes for the display. So let's move on to the Sump, which obviously also has some technology of some equipment in there. I'll quickly turn on the lights in the Sump to give you a better view of what's going on in there. So powering the Sump is a Skimmer, a Blue Marine Reef 300 Skimmer, which is still breaking in, of course. It's been in there for about a week, and it's bubbling away. I've placed it on two of the Maxspect blocks that I had in my previous tank. I moved them to this tank with a piece of silicone rubber underneath to prevent any any noise coming from it. So it's bubbling away nicely, as you can see right here. And well, let's see how it performs over the next few weeks. So if you're familiar with the Reefer series, you'll know that they come with standard plumbing. I had to do some quick tweaks since this is a second-hand tank. I bought it used, so I had to use some new O-rings and some Teflon tape to secure everything without leaking. And that was the challenge for the first few days. Other than that, it's pretty standard plumbing. The standard auto top-off unit, the top-off canister is there, which is about 4 to 5 liters, I think, so that takes about a day or two to deplete. And then the last piece of equipment is in the back here. Let's see if we can get there. Yes, so that's the Jecod 3000 liters per hour pump, which is very silent as well. So that's a big enough capacity pump to power this reef. It's running at 60%, so I'd say it's running about 15 to 1600 liters an hour output to create some circulation in the tank. And then of course a Red Sea canister with some filter floss in there to filter out the biggest particles when they come into the sump. So that's mainly the technique side, the equipment side that I wanted to show you. Now let's move on to some corals. So I haven't actually bought any new corals up until now, since migrating from the old tank. So these are all corals that I already had in my previous tank. Obviously they were scattered throughout the tank, so it was a bit harder to show them there. It's easier to show them up close now. I hope that the contrast changes when I click the coral on my screen, so that's good. So here's the Goniopora that I had in my previous tank. It's still adapting, of course, but it's already nice and shiny. And there's a Trachyphilia. I moved the Ricordea together on one rock, so I glued these rocks together to create a nice little Ricordea island. As you can see, there's still some cyanoalgae on the bottom. Obviously this is because it's a new tank, so the balance still has to get back into this tank. Today I actually moved the clownfish in there after, of course, measuring the nitrite and the ammonia values, which were 0. So that's a good signal for when you can move in some fish. And yeah, the other corals also all moved from the previous tank, like I mentioned. So there's some Calastrea, some Zoanthus, some Discosoma. I really like these red ones with the pink speckled top. And one small frag of Duncan coral, which I broke off the other coral. Then of course some more LPS. A small piece of Turbinaria here to the right, which is already extending its polyps, so that's cool to see. Then the amazing leather coral, which was actually very much covered with algae for the last few weeks. So it's currently getting cleaner and hopefully getting back to color quickly as well to get it nice and green metallic again. I moved the NPS Gorgonians to this tank. So here in the back is the red one, and here in the front is the yellow one. These are very nice corals to look at. They can appreciate some direct feeding, so I'm using ReefRoids to feed those. And then here in the left corner is the huge Elegans Coral, which also moved from the other tank. It's actually quite large, but I reserved a spot on the bottom left just for this coral, since I like it a lot. So it's allowed to take up this much space, and I'll reserve it just for this coral. And then there's just a small one, which is right here, which is recovering, that I got from a friend who was breaking down his tank, was going to break down his tank. And let's see if this one can recover as well, and hopefully one day get back to this size. Let's see. So let's quickly finish this round of corals. Some Montipora that I moved, some Zoanthus, a very small piece of Acropora. The idea is to definitely add more Acropora as the tank matures, but for now just old corals. So just the ones that were already in my reef. But all in all, I think I can be very happy with the way it's looking at the moment. Like I mentioned, I added my corals rather quickly. That's mainly because I used a piece of or the rock that you see has come from my old tank, so that was already matured. The sand I cleaned very thoroughly with tank water, so just with salt water, and then the water is all new. So I used the Aquaforest Probiotic Reef salt to fill up the tank. And yeah, added about 10% of the old water just for safety, to add maybe some bacteria that were in the old tank, good bacteria that were in the old tank, and then the 2 Maxspect blocks that you saw earlier in the video. So let's move to the other tank. So we'll quickly stroll around our living room, through the hallway, into the office, as you might call it, and back to where the old tank is. So as you can see, it's still running, and over the past few weeks I have been contemplating about what to do with the tank. I saw your comments on my last video. I didn't reply to them yet, sorry for that. I was a little busy with setting up the new tank, of course, but also thinking about what to do next. So I'll get to those comments at a later date. Don't worry. I have read most of them, I've seen them, and I've actually saw your suggestions as well. So as you can see, it's pretty much a fish-only tank now. There are still some corals in there, some of the more easier corals like the gorgonians, and some soft corals, and of course some Montipora, which are pretty hardy as well. And have been doing good up until now. So the question really is whether to break down this tank or to keep it in its current form. And actually I've been leaning towards the latter. Last week, since about a week, I did notice that the tank is actually starting to look a little bit more healthy than it was before. Maybe it's also because I don't see the corals deteriorating anymore in there, so that's definitely a factor that helps. I was just it was pretty heartbreaking and demotivating to see the corals health decreasing while the tank was not running very nicely. And now I have to say that the water is pretty clear. The corals that are still in there are doing rather fine, and the fish, of course, are still healthy. So that's a major, major choice that I have to make. But luckily, it's still running. It's not going anywhere. So I can take the time I need to decide how to move forward. But I am seriously thinking about keeping the tank as a fish-only tank, or mostly fish tank, since it's since I really have a hard time saying goodbye to these fish. Of course, the copper band, but also some of the other more harder to keep species like the Pigo, Pletes, Emperor Angel. Or not the Emperor Angel, but the angelfish. That's well, right here between the rocks. But also the spotted drum, which is also a very unique fish to have and to see mature. So still thinking about it, but leaning towards keeping the tank running for now. If you have any suggestions about cool fish to keep, please feel free to suggest them. Please, no heavy predators, since I want to keep my current fish as well. But if you have a nice idea, like maybe a nice trigger or a nice a puffer or other angelfish that you want to recommend, feel free to do so, because I'm still thinking about what's next. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you like the new Nano Reef as well. I hope you can still enjoy this one, and stay tuned for a video later this week where I will review the level keeper that I got from Reef Factory. I'll do an in-depth review later on this week. So for now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe, and with this coronavirus going on, please take care of your health, of your family, and stay indoors if you can, since we want to get out of this crisis as soon as possible. So please listen to what your government is saying, and stay safe out there. Okay, bye bye.